Yeah, that's not happening.
We're pretty much going to die a lot.
Hello there! So today I'm going to take a look at how to get a very simple satellite into orbit. Just a very simple beginning tutorial for a Kerbal Space Program. You'll notice that I've built a relatively small rocket here. You notice that it's composed of an ascent stage. I'll explain what that is later. It is composed of a orbital maneuver stage, a quick little boost stage just in case there's any relatively left that we need to expend. And you notice that I have a very small satellite up with an ion engine on it. Now, the difference between a rocket engine, like what you see down here, and an ion engine, is that the ion engine essentially accelerates some gas, in this case xenon, using electricity. So that means that most of the power it's actually using is electric. Whereas the chemical engines that we have down here, what we might call rocket engines, use some sort of fuel and some sort of oxidizer in some proportion in order to achieve thrust. So the xenon engine is able to operate very, very efficiently relative to its weight, because the fuel that you have on there isn't really most of the force that is being expended. It's just being kind of transferred into the fuel, which is then fired off the back. This makes for a very slow change in speed, but it's definitely worth it if you're pushing something very small, very far, because they last a long time. Just don't ever let it get eclipsed by anything, because if it loses solar power, you're pretty much toast unless you have the forethought to turn off your ion engine before that happens. So basically, how do we rocket? Well, assumedly, we're trying to get to some sort of an orbit. We're not trying to escape just yet. I'll go over that later. That'll be another video. But the most force that we expend is going to be the closest to the ground. Just getting started and getting to speed is going to be nearly all of our rocket. It's actually kind of surprising when you first look at it. So I've got 2 fuel tanks here and 2 rocket engines here. These 2 are going to get us to roughly 1,000 meters, just roughly around there, at which point we're going to start working. Not 1,000 meters, but roughly to one quarter out of the atmosphere. That was my mistake. Go ahead and yell at me in the comments if you want to. We have the second part of our ascent stage, which will finish up our ascent into orbit. It's not going to be a perfect orbit, but it's going to be an orbit. We're going to try to make it perfect, but, you know, we can always get what we want. Our orbital maneuver state will allow us to, once we're in that basic orbit, kind of configure it to what we want. Move to a higher altitude, move to a lower altitude, fix our inclination. I'll go over all that later. But we might run out of force, or let's say that I don't really want all this mass on there. That's why we have this. I've got these 4 rocket engines attached to these fuel tanks. Ideally, I won't need them, but they're a band-aid in case I screw up. Now you notice I have, it's really tiny, but I don't know if you can see my mouse there. I have a stack separator. The engine is covered in a little shroud. I've got a stack separator and engines, etc. The other thing you notice is I have a lot of what I commonly hear referred to as space tape. These structural strut connectors. Without these, the rocket would flop around like a windmill. So I know it's not horribly realistic in that regard, but we can make it act like an actual rocket using space tape. Now you'll notice that I have these fins here. Why do I have these fins here? I put these fins here so that the space tape can touch any 2 parts, despite the fact that there's stuff like this adapter in the way. So it kind of elevates the space tape in such a way that it can reach where it needs to go much more easily. I have 2 very large solar panels on here, and I think we're about ready to go, other than the fact that I have these launch stability enhancers. Now what these things are, you ever see on an actual rocket launch. There's a tower that is attached to it before it launches. These are pretty much that. These are pretty much your tower. But just one thing to make sure of is make sure, this is the little girder icon you see on stage 9, make sure they are in the same stage as the engines. Otherwise you have embarrassing situations like here. Let me actually show you what I mean. I'm actually going to deliberately screw this up just for you guys. I'll show you what happens when you don't do that. Alright, so you notice that I'm very stable on my nice tall tower here, which it's really unnecessary that I'm this high, but you know what, if I can get that much altitude out of it and therefore save that fuel, I know it looks silly, it is silly, but you know what, it works. But let's say that I tried to launch this and they were not in the same stage. Watch what happens. Am I gonna make it? Am I gonna make it? Yeah, come on. Let's just call that launch a success and say that my orbital parameters were supposed to be 0 altitude. Ah, see, I'm even getting sunlight. Yeah, we all know that's not a success. Let's try that again and fix it. Now, let's say that you screwed something up in the vehicle assembly building. You can actually fix that over here. You can't add or remove parts, but you can move them around. So, for example, I can take these and move them into the 9th stage with the engine. Now, one thing that I notice a lot of people doing is you want to have something called an ascent profile. There's certain air resistance that you encounter the entire way. So you want to use your left shift and left control to manage that, so you don't waste all sorts of fuel trying to push against an atmosphere that's pushing back against you exponentially hard. So at 1,000 we want to be at about 110. At 3,000 we want to be at about 130. At 5,000 we want to be at about 160. At 8,000 we want to be at about 215. At 10,000 we want to be at about 260. At 15,000 425. At 3,200, 2,250, basically it means free for all. Now, I'm going to shoot for a orbit altitude of about 150,000. I'm sorry, or rather 150 kilometers. So let's go ahead and do that. Now, through some experimentation, you'll be able to figure out which throttle will result in the best ascent profile for you. And I'll remind you about these milestones as we approach them. Let's go ahead. That's fine. I recovered. We're fine. Now you'll notice you have liquid fuel down here. If you want to see that in more detail, you should be able to click stage only unless there's something wrong. But I can actually look over here and I can see all the resources that we have available. Now, we're approaching 1,000, and we want to be at about 110 meters a second. Probably not going to be there. Yeah, we're definitely not there. That's mostly because we have this stage. This stage is a little underpowered, actually, but there's not a whole lot I can do about that without adding more power. Or, sorry, adding more dead weight, which is something I didn't want. So I'm going to have to make that up on my secondary ascent stage. Now, at 3,000, we want to be at 130. Once again, we're going to miss some more, but we're getting closer. We're at least at 100 at 3,000. At 5,000, we want to be at 160. Let's see how that goes. One thing you may notice that I'm speeding up more quickly, or rather, my rate of acceleration is faster as I get higher. So let me stage. There we go. Bam. Alright. So 5,000, I want to be at 160. Let me see what I can do about that, actually. That's 160, 8,215. Definitely not at 215. Alright, we're approaching 1/4 of the atmosphere, so I'm probably going to start my roll, because orbits are not just composed of altitude, they're also composed of speed. Speed is actually entirely what they're based on, like, that's how they work. So I'm going to go ahead and roll to my prograde direction here. That is, I've predetermined that it's going to be heading up to 90. Notice a little roll here. That's okay. That is A-okay. So we're approaching the point where it really doesn't matter. So I'm just going to go ahead and give myself all of the thrust. I tapped M to get to this menu. It shows not this menu, this display. It shows me exactly what's going on in my orbit. So I go here to take a look at my fuel. That ascent part is working now. Okay, so let's go ahead and fix this because this thing's not behaving. Good news is it doesn't particularly matter because we're already climbing, and we're climbing pretty good actually. But I'm going to see what I can do about getting us to 150,000. I think it was that I wanted. Come on. Okay, I can do so. I noticed that I'm burning at a 45-degree angle here. I'm doing that on purpose so I can raise my altitude. You only really want to do this on new orbit creation. You don't ever want to do this in orbit. I'll show you how you do it in orbit. We're approaching 150,000. It doesn't need to be perfect. We can make it perfect later with the Xenon engines. We just need it to work, basically. But a higher, I'm going to shoot for about 155 on this, just so it's easier for me to raise my prograde. What we're looking at right now is my apoapsis. So let's say you draw a circle, or rather an oval, around an object that you're orbiting, where the oval represents your orbit. Apoapsis is the highest point, rather the furthest point from that object, where periapsis is your closest point. Needless to say, the center of the Earth is not a valid orbit target unless you're trying to hit the Earth, because there's things in the way past a certain point. So, for example, let's say that you're trying to hit the atmosphere and therefore slow down to a descent. You want to do that at about 30,000. You want to aim your periapsis at about 30,000, and then you can deploy parachutes and such. But that's not the point of what we're doing here. This satellite should theoretically never come down unless something has gone very wrong. So I'm waiting for my apoapsis because it's most efficient to change your 2 points at either point. So I'm waiting until apoapsis so I can burn prograde, that is in the direction of my orbit, towards my periapsis and therefore raise it. If I zoom out a little bit, you can actually, I don't know if you guys can see that, but there's a little tealish like cyan line inside the Earth, or rather Kerbin. That is the path of my orbit, and I can actually watch as my periapsis rises from the center of Kerbin out towards something closer to the surface and hopefully outside the atmosphere. That's all I really care about at this point, because I can use my ion engines to fix it perfectly. There we go. I've just got a minute 26. I can use my comma and period keys to zoom back and forth. I'm just going to go ahead and zoom towards my periapsis because it doesn't need to be perfect right now, at least. And I'm going to go ahead and start boosting. Now notice that this circle seems to widen. Alright, looks like looks like I actually do need to use this thing. So I'm going to be careful about this. We might not achieve orbit as easily as I would have liked to, but let's see what we do. We go ahead and extend these panels so we actually get some sun to power my Xenon engine. Now, I'm actually really not happy about how this is turning out. I know what I can do. Wait a minute. I think it's actually... I think this thing's actually going to work. I might not have to use my RCS, but... Alright, so I'm going to use my RCS boosters just to kind of more quickly fix it and make sure that I fix it, because remember, xenon gas is very, very, slow. It's very efficient, but it's also very slow. There we go. You can actually see my, lines starting to come together. Now, these lines are coming together because they're dipping underneath the surface of Kerbin at some point. So we want that entire line, sorry, that entire oval to be out well outside of Kerbin. There we go. Now, I want my periapsis to be somewhere close to 150. And I notice my apoapsis is one. There we go. There's my periapsis. So this is going to be a little derpy because of how late the orbit formed, but we are going to successfully reach an orbit. I'm not going to waste my... Okay, is it a waste at this point? No, it's definitely not a waste. So remember, we're aiming for about 155. We're not going to get that right off the bat, but whatever. I'm going to aim my periapsis at about 100 or so, just to keep it well outside the atmosphere. And then I'm going to use my xenon and burn retrograde, that is against my orbit, to lower this apoapsis back down to 150. You actually see right now why it's not advisable to conduct burns outside of the points, because they tend to modify them both at once and you end up with an apoapsis which is more than double what it was. So you don't want to do that. Alright, cool. So, I'm going to fast forward over to periapsis over here. I'm going to go ahead and decline that call. Let me go ahead and throw that in airplane mode so I can't be called again. Because the particular person who's calling was totally the type to just sit there blowing up my phone until I pick up. You know what, do I have Do Not Disturb? I don't think I have Do Not Disturb. Hold on. So I'm going to go ahead and turn. You notice on my vertical situation indicator, you have the this sign which indicates prograde, and there's another one with an X through it that indicates retrograde. So I'm going to go ahead and get as perfectly on that as I can, and I'm going to start my burn. Now you'll notice that my speed starts decreasing very slowly. Welcome to Xenon engines. But notice how slowly my fuel is going down. I barely consumed anything. That's because most of the force that I'm expending, which the ion engine actually looks kind of cool. It's got this weird little honeycomb thing. It's really cool. But it uses power. So I'm aiming for about 150. Unfortunately, I can't zoom it while my thrust is up. Otherwise, I would totally just do past this for you guys. Occasionally it'll just need a little bit of investment. But one thing that's actually kind of interesting to point out, look how small our craft is now relative to how big the rocket was that delivered it up here. Do I have a whole lot of monopropellant? Yes, I do. You know what? I can aim for 150. Still a little bit altitude up. Get that further down. Yeah, I know it's not perfect, but it'll actually get above 150 once we do our burn there. You'll see what's going on with that. That's about 15 seconds until, let's go ahead and start our burn because xenon engines, or rather ion engines. Alright, so let's see if we can raise this up to 150,000. It's right now at a very unsatisfactory altitude because that will actually re-enter the atmosphere. So let's go ahead and wait for that. I'm going to use some monopropellant to try to raise that a little more quickly before we start messing with our apoapsis, which is at 150. Let's I'm still happy with that. We are now out of monopropellant. We are also out of electric charge. So remember when I told you not to do this? Yeah, don't do this. Now there's nothing I can do about the fact that it's doing nothing, and I can't zoom forward because it's throttled up, so I just kind of have to wait. So I'll go ahead and stop recording until that comes out the other side. Alright, sorry about that. So I just got power back because I just got to the other side of Kerbin here. Not a whole lot of damage. Okay, so let's just go ahead and speed back to Apoapsis. Let me take a look. Let's see how it is when I get there. I have to burn at Apoapsis, but the sun is on the other side of Kerbin when I do that. So I might have to wait for it. This is going to be a little bit of a pain. Let me actually try using my monopropellant on the other side instead of the Xenon. I still have some left, and this is pretty much what it's for in this case. In most cases, you use it for rotation and translation, that is moving left to right, up and down, without worrying about your direction, really. But in this case, it's just being used as, like, it's almost being used as rocket fuel. That is, these monopropellant thrusters here, these you actually see them called RCS thrusters. Relative to the size of my craft, they're very powerful, so they're in all likelihood enough to get something like this to actually work. Let me go ahead and lock this up. Save, or rather engage SAS, and boost. See if I can get that up to 150. That's up to 150. We just boost that a little bit. That's up at 152. I don't want that to be up to 152. Let's get this up to 150. Perfect. Bam. Alright. Now, let's go back to Periapsis over here. Also give ourselves a chance to get exposed to our lovely sun and get some power. Now, you could call the orbit good at this point. I'm just trying to make it perfect. So we should need pretty much one more burn. That should be it. Apoapsis is about 8,000 over where I want it to be. Let's see what we can do about that. Alright, cool. Let's do this. Now, why would you want an orbit to be perfect like this? Let's talk about that. Let's say, for example, that you're building and launching a space station. You'll see later why it's very difficult for me to see where its actual apoapsis and periapsis is. So if it's at a constant altitude, that is a beautiful thing. Okay, so that's 149, this 150. Alright, so we've got less than 1,000 difference, less than 1,000 meters difference between them. That's more than enough. I'm sorry, that's more than close enough. Like, comment, subscribe if you like my videos. Tell your friends, tell your family, post me on Facebook, etc. Kerbal Space Program is amazing. Thank you.